What if Spain was still ruled by the Habsburg? In our own timeline, Spain was ruled by the House of Hapsburg, which also ruled Austria and Holy Roman Empire from 1516 beginning with Carlos I to 1700 ending with Carlos II. Since Carlos II had no heir, he chose Philip of Anjou, who was the grandson of King Louis XIV, to be his successor, which sparked a succession war in which they prevailed. The Bourbons, despite of being interrupted multiple times, rule Spain to this day. But what if that didn't happen? What if Spain was still ruled by the Habsburg? In this timeline, Carlos II doesn't name Philip of Anjou his successor, and when he dies he is succeeded by the son of Holy Roman Emperor Karl von Habsburg, who is crowned as Carlos III. 7 years later in 1707 the Holy Roman Emperor Leopold II would die himself, and his other son Joseph became Holy Roman Emperor as Joseph II, which means the Holy Roman Emperor and King of Spain are brothers. But things get worse quickly, because 4 years later in 1711, Joseph died without an heir and his brother Karl succeeded him as Karl VI, meaning Austria and Spain are ruled by the same person, and are united in a personal union, known as the Austro-Spanish Union or the Habsburg Empire. This would anger the other European powers who feared a resurgent Habsburg, and thus the War of the Austrian Succession would start with the Habsburg on one side, and the anti-Habsburg coalition consisting of France, Portugal, and the United Provinces on the other side. France did hope the newly formed Kingdom of Great Britain would join their side, but the British feared a too strong France just as much as a too strong Habsburg and remained neutral. The United Provinces and Portugal would quickly fall, and eventually France has to sue for peace and sign the Treaty of Paris. Carlos III became King of Portugal, reforming the Iberian Union, and the United Provinces were reintegrated into the Habsburg Netherlands. France lost all of its gains from the Franco-Spanish War, or in other words Artois, Carolise, Ruslan, and also Franche-Comté. Furthermore, they had to give up all of their North American claims west of the Mississippi and Saint-Domingue or Haiti. Lastly, they have to pay high reparations and recognize Karl as Holy Roman Emperor. The Habsburg established themselves as the masters of the continent once more. The Silesian Wars wouldn't happen as Prussia would likely not even think about attacking this much larger foe. This means the 7 Years' War is only between France and Great Britain and ends by 1760. The war ends with Great Britain taking French colonies in the Americas and India. Despite of the war not having bankrupted Great Britain as much as in our own timeline, it is likely that taxes are raised and the American Revolution begins. With French help, the Americans gained independence. In 1789, the French Revolution still breaks out and Napoleon still rises to power. After defeating the Habsburg in the First Coalition War, he still expands to the Rhine and puppets the Netherlands but also retakes Ruslan. After the Third War, Spain would be forcefully separated from Austria and be turned into a French ally, only for Napoleon to then puppet Spain, causing the Peninsular War. In 1814 and 1815 Napoleon is still defeated and exiled and the four great powers, namely Russia, Great Britain, Austria and Spain, redraw Europe. There the great powers decide to split up the Habsburg realm into two. Austria is ruled by Francis I and gets the Habsburg Netherlands, Milan, the former Dutch colonies, namely Indonesia, Ceylon, South Africa and Suriname, and on top of that Venice. Spain is ruled by his son Archduke Franz Karl as Francisco I and gets Sardinia, Sicily, Naples and all former Spanish and Portuguese colonies, namely in the Americas, Philippines, Angola, Mozambique, Guinea, Goa, Macau, etc. Unfortunately for Spain, their American colonies, bearing the Caribbean, would gain independence soon thereafter. Brazil wouldn't be ruled by Pedro II, and it is more likely that Brazil splits into many smaller states, like all the other Spanish viceroyalties. Without Brazil, the Paraguay War might not happen and Paraguay doesn't lose 90% of its male population. In the Chaco War, Paraguay would be even more successful and take the whole Chaco region. The War of 1812 still happens, but since the United States doesn't own Louisiana, the Battle of New Orleans doesn't happen and the British come out victorious. In the post-war peace, the Tecumseh Confederacy gained independence and the United Kingdom took large swaths of modern-day Maine as the colony of New Ireland. Not only is Louisiana controlled by Mexico, but Mexico also controls Florida as it is directly connected. It's possible that Americas migrate to Florida similar to Texas, but a Mexican-American war would likely end in a Mexican victory, but I doubt they take any land. In the U.S., Alabama and Mississippi are united as one state in order to uphold the balance of free and slave states. The Civil War would, however, still happen, and the North still wins. After the Revolution of 1848, it would be Karl Ludwig who becomes Austrian emperor, while Franz Joseph would become king of Spain in 1878 as Francesco II. After Rudolf committed suicide, Otto Franz becomes heir to the Spanish throne, followed by Charles, who is crowned as Carlos IV in 1916. In 1896, after Karl Ludwig's death, Franz Ferdinand becomes Emperor of Austria. In 1859, the Second War of Italian Independence breaks out, but in this timeline Spain helps out Austria, and helps to turn the tide. The United Provinces of Central Italy become the Kingdom of Tuscany under Ferdinand IV, and Piedmont becomes an Austrian vassal state under Francesco V. Piedmont gets lands east of the Rhone River, and the Austrians also take the coastal region of Calais and some lands that connect French Count to Piedmont, while the Grand Duchy of Lorraine gets lands east of the Moss River. Spain also gets Corsica, and Napoleon III is overthrown. Thanks to Spain, Austria also wins the Austro-Prussian War. Prussia loses Schleswig to Austria, Posen and West Prussia were given to Russia, Vorpommern to Mecklenburg-Schwerin, which switched sides and annexed Mecklenburg-Strelitz, lands west of the Elbe, to Hanover, and former Saxon lands to Saxony. Lastly, Brandenburg becomes an Austrian vassal, leaving only Prussia behind. Austria-Hungary would never be formed. The Russo-Turkish War and Second Congress of Vienna happen with similar results. The Vienna Conference still happens, and Europe divides Africa. Austria would get southern Africa and Somaliland, while Spain gets Rhodesia and Morocco. France owns Cameroon and Togo, while the United Kingdom owns Eritrea and Tanzania. Lastly, the Congo is owned by Prussia. Prussia would eventually become a republic, and then a National Socialist dictatorship under Erich Koch, with Reingard Heydrich as Reichskommissar of Congo. The Spanish-American War would result in a Spanish victory, and after the war, they even retake Hispaniola. Without an Italo-Turkish war, the Ottoman Empire wins the First Balkan War. They annex East Rumela, Montenegro, Niš, and Thessaly, and puppets Bulgaria. The three Pasha don't rise to power. A First World War could still break out in 1914 with the Habsburgs on one side and Russia, France, and Serbia on the other. Without Belgium existing, Austria can't violate its neutrality, and so the United Kingdom doesn't join. By late August, Paris is besieged, and the Ottomans and Japan join the war. Together they defeat Serbia. Soon later, France surrenders, and by 1915 Russia does too, bringing an end to the war. France loses Djibouti, Indochina, and New Caledonia, which is renamed to New Illyrian, to Austria, and Madagascar, Gabon, Congo, and Ubangi Shari to Spain. Mainland France would be split between Austria and Spain along the Loire River. The Kingdom of France is led by Philip VIII, and the Kingdom of Occitania is led by Albert I of Monaco, while Brittany declared independence. The French Third Republic was only left with its remaining African holdings. The Ottomans also got Tunisia back. Serbia becomes an Austrian vassal state, and the Austrians also puppet Poland under Karl Albert as Casimir V, Ukraine under Vasil I, Belarus under Joseph August von Hapsburg, United Baltic Duchy under Karl Urak, Kingdom of Finland under Frederick Karl of Hesse, and Kingdom of Georgia under George XIII, and Japan puppets Transamur under Semyonov and annexes North Sakhalin. The Ottoman Empire annexes Kars, Batumi, and Ardahan, and puppets the Azerbaijan Democratic Republic under Fadli Khan Koyski. After the war, the Habsburg alliances breaks down as Tuscany and Spain fear a too strong Austria. Russia would become a republic, and later a stratocratic Russian state under Lavo Kornilov. Austria would federalize into the United States of Greater Austria and release the Austrian Netherlands as a puppet regime under Eugen von Habsburg-Lothringen. Austria supports the Qing coup of 1917, and they succeed. Zhang Zhaolin of the Fengshan clique would then switch allegiances, and the Zili clique falls into the Hunan clique and the League of the Three Provinces. With Qing help, the Guangxi clique drives the Kuomintang out. Pai would become Emperor of China once more. In 1926, Black Sunday breaks out in Vienna, causing a Great Depression. In Mexico, Zapatists take over the country in 1929, creating the first socialist state. In 1934 and 1935, Argentina and Vera Cruz also become socialist. With Louisiana part of Mexico, Hoover doesn't exist, and Frank Orne Loden becomes president. When he becomes president, the U.S. is mostly out of the Great Depression, but in 1929 the American stock market crash happens. FDR still becomes president in 1933. By 1936, Austria is encircled. Spain wants to be the great power of Europe, the Entente wants Paris back, though they might cooperate with Austria to get Occitania to Prussia. The Ottomans and Russia want their desired lands back, and Japan wants to dominate the Pacific. A Second World War seems likely. In this timeline, Austria and Spain would become great powers, and the House of Hapsburg would be the most powerful one in the world. If you liked the episode, leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe. Goodbye.